Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to go over the 5 reasons why crypto means that government will never be the same. I wanted to make this video because a lot of people are now getting into the crypto space. They're getting excited about things like Dogecoin. Obviously, Bitcoin has been popping off over the last few months, and Ethereum has been doing really well as well. And although a lot of people are getting into it because of the financial gains to be had, the monetary aspect, there's a lot more deeper dynamics going on with crypto than I would assume many of the people realize who are buying into it to try and make a quick buck. And really, the crypto revolution, what it is and what it stands for, is going to fundamentally change how pretty much anything that you can think of is going to work going forward. This is a disruption to the financial layer at a level that is totally irreversible, and it's going to have seismic effects, both in world politics, in governance, in the organization of corporations, and the proliferation of money, and the distribution of resources. And we're only starting to get into the beginning stages of how all this is going to play out. So, first off, the biggest effect, and the most obvious effect that people know of that crypto is going to have on governance is releasing this stranglehold that governments have over their own fiat currencies. As many of you know, our currencies used to be based on real resource stores like gold, for example, and now they're no longer, which means that effectively any world currency can be manipulated by the government who issues it in any way that they like to, help stabilize their markets, to devalue it for certain strategic reasons, to, close up the supply if they're trying to create certain, inflationary pressures. When you're in the United States, of course, everyone's noticed over the last year that the Fed printers had turned on in March and have not turned off since. And so when the federal government of the country that you're living is just producing insane amounts of literal dollars, and with a click of a button adding billions and billions of dollars into the system, into circulation, well, that's going to diminish the value of your currency. It's going to cause inflation, and that makes a lot of people really unhappy, because anyone that's trying to save up, anyone that has money in US dollars sitting around, well, that money is now less valuable than it was before. And so with cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, for example, which has a limited number of Bitcoins that will ever exist, you don't run into that problem. There's no way to, for some government or some large agency to just decide, okay, we're just going to print billions and billions of more Bitcoins because we want to help out with the market conditions, or we're trying to manipulate something or rather. And so protection from arbitrary printing and devaluation of the currency is one of the core features and one of the main things that people think about when they think about the difference between cryptocurrencies and fiat currencies that are issued by governments. And this gets into my next point. So the next point is, of course, protection from individuals by seizure from the government. So right now, if you have dollars sitting in a bank account, it's pretty easy actually for a government, and it doesn't even have to be the federal government. There was a case with the Massachusetts state government actually, I believe it was New Jersey, seizing funds from a gym that refused to close during the lockdown orders, and they were fined a bunch, and they were raising money on the side, not from their normal business operations, just from people that felt sympathetic to their cause because they were refusing to close. And yet the state still went ahead and just seized $137,000 from their bank account. And so that's still possible. It can still happen in cryptocurrency. You can still technically have your funds seized, especially if they're sitting inside of a front-end trading platform, someplace like Coinbase, or inside of a Robinhood account, and you don't have them locked down into a digital wallet. But it's a lot harder for them to get to it if you have it locked down into a digital wallet. It's very hard for them to get access to it if they don't know the secret key that you have. And, they may be able to get it eventually with something like a warrant where they can just, seize your laptop, seize your property itself. But even then, there are more ways for you to keep it sort of secretive and encrypted, and to avoid seizure of those not government, but of those funds that you have, of your personal funds. And so that's another way that it protects you from arbitrary rule or from tyrannical governments, is that it's a lot harder for them to just get a hold of. Whereas if you have it sitting in a bank account, or in a stockpiled under your mattress or something, it's not very hard for them to get a hold of it at all. And in fact, it's even less safe, I would say, in a financial institution than it is inside of like your house, because of course, the financial institution is just going to do whatever they ask. So that's the next reason why, is that it's actually just safer from individual seizures. So if you're in a country like Venezuela, or somewhere where there's a lot of instability going on, there have been reports of people there storing a lot of their net worth inside of Bitcoin, because of the fact that the government is so unstable and they're worried about it getting seized for being, dissidents or whatnot. And so that's another protection that you get. The other aspect that the way that it protects you is there's anonymization. Now, there's some anonymization that goes along with cash. If you're handling just cash, it's actually pretty hard to trace where that cash has been and where that cash has been coming from if you haven't been transferring it digitally and you haven't been keeping a paper trail record of it. But there's enhanced anonymization methods and processes that are available with Bitcoin. For example, you can take your Bitcoin and you can split it up into the most fundamental units of Bitcoin, which are Satoshis. And you can mix together a bunch of Satoshis from one place with a bunch of Satoshis from another place, and it becomes impossible to discern where exactly that Bitcoin came from. Obviously, there is some tracing that still happens, because every transaction gets posted on the public ledger, and so you can see all the transactions that are taking place. But in a given pot of Satoshis, or of Bitcoin that is owned, you can mix up all the Satoshis, and that makes it somewhat anonymous and very, very difficult for anyone to go ahead and try to trace where that Bitcoin might have come from. And so again, with protection from seizure, there is also increased anonymity as well. Now, the fourth reason why crypto is going to have such a big effect on governments, is really going to change the relationship of governments to their citizens, is that there's going to be global access, right? This is the first currency in existence that's truly global. Now, of course, there has always been sort of the default currency, the well-known, most popular store of value in the world of various kinds. Obviously, the US dollar is probably the most popular and most opted for store of value in the world, just because people trust the US system, they trust the US economy. They just, we're still the largest economy in the world. And so as long as those things are true, people will continue to try to put their long-term value into US dollars. But of course, there's all kinds of issues that you run into when you're trying to make those fungible. You run into different exchange rates. People's, trying to determine how much of my currency is worth how much of your currency, whether you're trading dollars for euros or dollars for yen or dollars for rubles. It gets very, very complicated. We've got all these individual nation states who are each printing their own currency and each deciding based on a number of different factors, and of course market demand as well, how much that currency should be worth and what it should be traded for, and also who has access to it. So one of the things that crypto provides is really a global currency, and I would say that is probably going to be Bitcoin here, out of all the cryptos that exist, that is going to be the most well-known and popular global exchange currency. And I do believe that it will eventually become the global reserve currency. Right now, the global reserve currency is still the US dollar, but it will eventually be Bitcoin. And I'm really, really certain of that. There's no way that the current system can keep going as it is. And the other thing too is this is going to create more financial equality as well, more financial equity across the world. Because if you have Bitcoin in Nigeria, or you have Bitcoin in Bolivia, or you have Bitcoin in Mongolia, that Bitcoin is worth the same as the Bitcoin here in the United States, or the Bitcoin in France, or the Bitcoin in China. And regardless of what happens, all that Bitcoin is on the same ledger and it's all worth the same. And it exchanges at the same rate with all of the other currencies that exist, including other cryptocurrencies and tokens. And so there is a certain amount of equity and redistribution of wealth that's possible because of the fact that there's this global currency that can be used. So if you're in a country where your currency isn't that valuable, you don't necessarily have to get paid in that currency anymore. Whereas before you really had to, because there wasn't a whole lot of choice, and maybe you could accept some US dollars or something like that, but it was really hard and you had to pay really high fines in order to transfer it back. And so this allows those kinds of people to actually get paid in a currency that makes sense for them, and that they can still use and that they can make fungible without paying exorbitant fees. Okay, and my last point here, and this is the real kicker, the real exciting one, is decentralized autonomous organizations, right? So right now, every organization that we have pretty much, with the exception of a few like open source projects and various kinds of things, and even those are rather hierarchical in terms of how they're built, are kind of centralized. One of the problems that people are having with these consumer retail apps is, of course, that they're finding out very quickly that their accounts can get turned off, that their funds can get, seized. Technically, you don't own what's in your Robinhood account, and that there's not really any way for the individual consumer to have power over the kinds of trading that they're doing with these brokerages. But cryptocurrency is going to allow all of that to change, and specifically with protocols like Ethereum, where you can have smart contracts that trigger due to certain conditions and certain events being met. What you can start to do is you can start to build out these decentralized autonomous organizations, that is, organizations which run on a series of smart contracts and aren't in the control of any one small group of humans or some kind of hierarchical corporate governance structure. The machine that runs itself. And so you can theoretically start to create organizations, especially through the Ethereum protocol, that operate on strict rules and have guidelines for how they can be altered based on the number of nodes in the network agreeing, and proof of stake or proof of work, whatever protocol you want to use. And these organizations will just operate freely, and you can have a decentralized autonomous brokerage firm, something like a Robinhood, except that firm wouldn't have any control over stopping your trades or turning a particular fund off because they don't like the activity that is happening on it. And so these funds would still have rules, of course. These organizations would still have certain rules that they have to abide by, and there'd probably be some regulatory issues as well that they'd have to work out. But in general, the fact that there's not a human at the helm who can just sort of flip the switch and turn it off makes these things very, very, very powerful. And so you can have corporations, entire businesses that just run on themselves. And of course, there's still humans in the loop, but those humans aren't controlling the rules of the game, and they aren't controlling the operation of the organization. And so decentralized autonomous organizations are going to be the future of corporations, and they're going to fundamentally alter the relationship of governments to their citizens. So those are the 5 reasons why cryptocurrency is going to change government forever. If you have any reasons of your own and you want to let me know, put them in the comments. See you guys next time.